The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's emergency room cast everything in that particular shade of institutional white that seemed to drain color from the world. Rachel Thompson sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair, her hands folded tightly in her lap, fighting the urge to simply leave and pretend nothing was wrong. At 29, Rachel had always been the quiet one, the librarian who preferred books to people, who found comfort in the orderly world of cataloged stories and hushed conversations. But today, her carefully controlled world had been disrupted by something embarrassing and painful that she couldn't ignore any longer. She'd waited 3 days hoping the problem would resolve itself. When it only got worse, her best friend Lisa had practically dragged her to the emergency room, threatening to call an ambulance if Rachel didn't go willingly. Rachel Thompson, a nurse with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, called from the doorway. Rachel followed her down the corridor, her cheeks already burning with anticipated embarrassment. How do you explain something so personal to complete strangers? How do you maintain any dignity when your body betrays you in the most uncomfortable ways? Room 7, the nurse said gently. Dr. Martinez will be with you shortly. Try to relax, dear. We've seen everything here, and there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Rachel nodded, though her stomach continued to churn with anxiety. She'd changed into the hospital gown and was sitting on the examination table staring at her hands when there was a soft knock on the door. Ms. Thompson, I'm Dr. Martinez. Rachel looked up to see a man in his early 30s with warm brown eyes and an unexpectedly gentle smile. There was something immediately reassuring about his presence, the way he moved with quiet confidence, the respectful distance he maintained, the genuine concern in his voice. I understand you're experiencing some discomfort, he said, settling into the chair beside the examination table rather than standing over her. Can you tell me what's been happening? Something about his approach, the way he made eye contact without being invasive, the calm patience in his voice, made Rachel feel safe enough to explain her symptoms. Dr. Martinez listened without judgment, asking gentle questions and nodding with understanding. What you're describing is more common than you might think, he said reassuringly. It's a bacterial infection that can happen to anyone, and it's completely treatable. Nothing you did caused this, and there's absolutely nothing to be embarrassed about. The examination was conducted with such professionalism and kindness that Rachel found herself relaxing for the first time in days. Dr. Martinez explained everything he was doing, why it was necessary, and what the treatment would involve. We'll start you on antibiotics, he said, washing his hands at the small sink. You should feel better within 48 hours and completely recovered within a week. I want you to follow up with your regular doctor in 5 days, but if you have any concerns before then, don't hesitate to come back. As he wrote out the prescription, Rachel found herself studying his face. There was something different about him, a quality of attention and care that went beyond professional obligation. When he handed her the prescription, their fingers brushed briefly, and she felt an unexpected flutter of something she hadn't experienced in years. Dr. Martinez, she said as he prepared to leave, thank you for being so understanding. I was terrified to come here. He turned back with that same gentle smile. That's what we're here for, Rachel. And please, call me Miguel. Take care of yourself and remember, there's nothing wrong with seeking help when you need it. A week later, Rachel returned for her follow-up appointment. The infection had cleared completely, just as Dr. Martinez had promised, but she found herself hoping she might see him again. Instead, she met with Dr. Williams, an efficient woman in her 50s, who confirmed her recovery and cleared her to return to normal activities. Dr. Martinez asked me to tell you he's glad you're feeling better, Dr. Williams mentioned as she updated Rachel's chart. He doesn't usually follow up on patients personally, but he seemed particularly concerned about your case. Rachel left the hospital with a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. She was healthy again, but the brief connection she'd felt with the kind doctor seemed to have been just that, brief. 3 months passed. Rachel had returned to her quiet routine at the city library, cataloging new acquisitions and helping patrons find their next great read. She thought about Dr. Martinez occasionally, usually when she drove past the hospital, but she'd filed the memory away as one of those small moments of human kindness that make difficult times bearable. Then one Saturday afternoon, she was restocking the medical reference section when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Excuse me, could you help me find something on community health initiatives?" Rachel turned to find Miguel Martinez standing in the aisle, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of his white coat, looking somehow both more ordinary and more handsome than she remembered. "Dr. Martinez," she said, surprised by how pleased she felt to see him. "Miguel, please, and you're Rachel, right? From the ER a few months ago?" She nodded, touched that he remembered her name. "Yes. How can I help you with community health?" As she led him to the appropriate section, Miguel explained that he was researching mobile health clinics for underserved communities. "I've been thinking about starting a program that brings basic medical care to people who can't easily get to hospitals. Rural areas, elderly populations, that sort of thing." Rachel found herself genuinely interested in his project. They spent the next hour discussing resources, and she helped him locate several useful databases and research papers. Their conversation flowed naturally, moving from professional topics to personal interests, books they'd enjoyed, places they'd traveled, dreams they harbored for the future. "I should probably let you get back to work," Miguel said eventually, though he seemed reluctant to leave. "Actually," Rachel said, surprising herself with her boldness, "my shift ends in 20 minutes. If you'd like to continue this conversation over coffee, there's a nice cafe just down the street." Miguel's smile was answer enough. Over coffee, Rachel learned that Miguel came from a family of doctors, but had chosen emergency medicine specifically because he wanted to help people in their most vulnerable moments. He'd grown up in a small town where the nearest hospital was an hour away, and he'd seen firsthand how lack of access to health care could devastate families. "What about you?" he asked. "What drew you to library work?" Rachel found herself opening up in ways she rarely did with anyone. She talked about her love of books, her belief that libraries were one of the last truly democratic spaces in society, her quiet satisfaction in helping people find exactly what they needed, even when they weren't sure what that was. "You know," Miguel said thoughtfully, "what you do and what I do aren't so different. We both help people who come to us in need, often feeling vulnerable or uncertain." Their coffee date turned into dinner, and dinner led to a long walk through the city park. By the time Miguel walked Rachel to her car, they'd discovered a dozen shared interests and an easy compatibility that surprised them both. "I'd like to see you again," Miguel said as she unlocked her car door. "Not as a patient, obviously, but as someone I'd very much like to get to know better." 6 months later, Rachel stood in the same emergency room where they'd first met, but this time she wasn't a patient. She was there for the dedication ceremony of the new mobile health clinic, a project that had grown from Miguel's initial research into a fully funded program serving 3 counties. She watched proudly as Miguel spoke to the assembled crowd about the importance of accessible healthcare and the power of community support. He'd worked tirelessly to make the program a reality, and Rachel had been there for every late-night planning session, every grant application, every moment of doubt and triumph. As the ceremony concluded and people began to mingle, Miguel found her in the crowd. "So," he said, taking her hand, "how does it feel to be dating a guy who's technically a millionaire now?" Rachel laughed. The grant money and private donations had indeed made Miguel wealthy on paper, though every cent was dedicated to the health clinic project. "I think I fell for the doctor, not the bank account." "Good thing," Miguel replied, "because I fell for the librarian who wasn't afraid to help a stranger find what he was looking for." Later that evening, as they sat in Rachel's small apartment surrounded by books and medical journals, Miguel told her something he'd never shared with anyone. "That day you came to the ER," he said. "You were so frightened, but you were also so brave. You faced something that terrified you because you knew you needed help. That kind of courage, it changed how I see my patients." How I see everyone, really. Rachel curled up beside him on the couch, thinking about the unexpected journey that had brought them together.